In Luke 11:24 through 26, Jesus says, when the unclean spirit has gone out of a person, it passes through waterless places seeking rest, and finding none, it says, I will return to my house from which I came. And when it comes, it finds the house swept and put in order. Then it goes and brings 7 other spirits more evil than itself, and they enter and dwell there, and the last state of that person is worse than the first. I believe Jesus is using demons as a foil or an object lesson to make a moral and spiritual point to all of us that once our lives are clean of that evil influence, if we attempt to finish the job cosmetically on the outside, if we don't deal with the symptoms but only the root cause, if we do an external cleanup but don't do an internal cleanup, then we too are in danger, just as a demoniac was in danger of a return visit of those monsters that would invade and do a hostile takeover. I got to thinking because I often cover one of the gospel accounts in evangelism. And there was a time when I almost wanted to avoid these episodes like a plague. I believe in demons. I believe they're still active, even though not in the same sense that they were during the apostolic age. But I genuinely had trouble conveying some of these episodes to people in modern society who had hangups about the supernatural to begin with. And so there was a time in my evangelistic life when I kind of danced around the whole thing, but I have completely changed my view on that in more recent times. I embrace these episodes. When I get to Mark chapter 5, for example, this demoniac who cannot be controlled by anybody, who breaks chains, who hurts himself, and lives among the tombs. Jesus comes and he helps this man. And I can't prove this, but I'm going to give you my own little theory. Okay, and that's dangerous business to do from the pulpit, but I'm going to do it anyway. Here's my own little theory on demonology and demon possession in the first century with Jesus and the apostles. I believe that evil really exists, that there is a Satan, that there are demons, that there are the devil's angels, if you will, and that they are a personal existential threat to all of us. But I believe that demonology in the first century was kind of a Reader's Digest version of a phenomenon that is often less comprehensive and drawn out much longer. The destructive, devastating force of Satan in this wicked world usually manifests itself in our life experience as a slow motion train wreck, drawn out over a long period of time, where bad choices follow other bad choices, and all of a sudden the person is not himself or herself, doesn't even resemble the person before that slow motion train wreck. I think demon possession in the first century took that slow motion train wreck and turned it into a time capsule in time lapse photography and put it on steroids so that you have a kind of a fast forward abbreviated picture, a summary of something that usually takes a much longer process of total spiritual collapse on a larger scale, accentuated, amplified exponentially to give a picture of Satan's destructive power in a snapshot of time. Where a person is vulnerable, there's a hostile takeover, like parasites invading a host, a surrender to demonic influences, self-destruction, helplessness, a person not in his right mind, not even in control of his own faculties, who then becomes a tool of the devil. A slow motion process usually put into overdrive to show this one simple point. The superiority of the forces of good over the forces of evil, so that we have a snapshot picture, a more radical, more extreme case history, if you will, so that we can argue from the greater to the lesser. If Jesus can deal with this, what can he deal with? What can he do for you? If, for example, that demoniac I mentioned in Mark 5 in verse 15 is now clothed and in his right mind. And that's what causes the people of Gerasa to be frightened about, because he's clothed and in his right mind. If Jesus can fix this person, what can he do for you? Hopeless case? No, not for Jesus. But you argue that direct possession is not something that we witness today, or at least not on the same scale that we see it in demonology of the first century. And I would agree with that. But demons still exist. People still succumb to the doctrines of demons, Paul writes to Timothy about. 2 Timothy chapter 2 and verse 26 speaks of people coming to their senses and escaping the snare of the devil after being captured by him to do his will. It's not quite demon possession, but on a smaller scale. People are under a spell. Satan enters into Judas Iscariot, Luke 22, verse 3. Yes, he makes some bad choices, but Satan enters him, and he's not entirely in his right mind. Yes, he succumbs to temptation and becomes a very evil person as a result of his own personal choices. But I think demonology is kind of a snapshot of a much longer process that usually is a slow train wreck, slow motion. And on the bigger scale of things, we learn in 1 John chapter 3 and verse 8 that whoever makes a practice of sinning is of the devil, for the devil has been sinning from the beginning. The reason the Son of God appeared was to destroy the works of the devil. You have a cosmic battlefield, and Jesus comes to this earth, takes upon himself human flesh, dies for our sin on the cross. Why? To destroy the destructive work of the devil. Chapter 4 and verse 4 of 1 John. Little children, you are from God and have overcome them. For he who is in you is greater than he who is in the world. Chapter 5, verse 19. We know that we are from God, and the whole world lies in the power of the evil one. They're under his spell, and he has invaded them, maybe not as directly as you see in these demon instances in the first century, but People are not in their right mind. The devil has invaded. But one of the most beautiful verses in the New Testament is the one that precedes that one. 1 John 5, verse 18. We know that everyone who has been born of God does not keep on sinning. But he who is born of God protects him, and the evil one does not touch him. The spell is broken, and we have this hedge of protection so that greater is he who is in you than he who is in the world, chapter 4, verse 4. When Jesus came to die on a cross, he came not only to forgive us, but to transform us. He came to destroy the works of the devil, chapter 3, verse 8. He came to give you the confidence that you can not only be saved and forgiven of everything you've done that is evil, but that you can be genuinely transformed and protected. That's something to think about as we contemplate the cross this morning.